TikTok and others to know how they can be regulated.
Nominee, it is not about the regulator. If you are approved, you'll be the minister providing policy direction.
Exactly,
That's
Mr.
what
Speaker.
Ichunga wants
So
to
my
know.
first directive to CA is to be able to get to know how this can be regulated. And we have technical people who have experience, Mr. Speaker, on how these things can be done. I should be able to sit with them on the first or second day of my term in office to make sure that there is a direct and clear way of dealing with these problems. So, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of exploitation, I have addressed that. Perfect and harmful content, again, it is a matter of great concern how much bad content is available on these platforms, and it is worldwide. We have seen situations where other countries have stopped certain platforms in operating, like, for example, the discussion now in the US, where TikTok is supposed to be banned from using the American airspace. I should be able to get to the bottom of these things and see that the Kenyan content is good for consumption for underage and also other users. If I go to, I'm not sure whether I got the third question from...
he asked if you are still chairman of Tujibebe party.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am not a chairman of Jibebe now. The minute I was nominated by the president, I resigned the following day. And I think a copy of that is in the bundle of documents that I have given. From the Honorable Junet, a question I have dealt with all my life since that fateful day when Professor Saitoti, the late, dropped names of MPs as suspected drug dealers. I want to say here on record, Mr. Speaker, I have never, ever dealt with drugs of any kind all my life. Mr. Speaker, this is...
Not even Panadol?
Mr. Speaker, I do not imagine that Junet Mohammed was asking about Panadol. I have some in my pocket if it's just Panadol. But I know he's talking about hard...
You know what he meant.
He's talking about hard drugs, cocaine and the rest. And this is a very disturbing subject, Mr. Speaker. But I invite Kenyans also to have a look at the dossier that Mr. Saitoti brought to the House. It's a dossier such that, Mr. Speaker, if it was given to Inspector Mwala, it would not pass Mr. Mwala's table for a script. If, Mr. Speaker, at that point in time, and records speak here in this House, I fought vigorously the tabling of our names without a leave of the House, because the rules are such that if you are discussing the conduct of an MP, you need to move a substantive motion. But for that particular one, it went through smoothly as planned. But my point here, Mr. Speaker, the government or agencies, the police, did a thorough investigation, and they gave a temporary report a month later, which was tabled and is part of the records of this House. And they found that I was not culpable. I had never been involved in drug trafficking, and I had never been a driver of the Honorable Mao, as that dossier had said. I actually said, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of this House, that there is no need of anyone trying to do extradition proceedings to get me to travel to the US to answer these charges. I offered myself. They give me a one-way visa, and I'll take myself to any part of the world to answer charges of drugs. It's never happened. So the authors of that dossier probably didn't get exactly what they wanted, but what they got is messing with people's names. And that is the situation it is today. Mr. Speaker, it has continued to happen. People talking about, you will find some of us are named Pablo, all those names. But the truth be told is that I did take some people to court. If you remember, there was a program by Standard called something Mihadarati by Mheshimiwa from Nyali. And I did take them to court. It's taken long, about 8 or 9 years. But finally, I got judgment against them, and I was paid a little bit of money. But circulation is still happening. This is something I am bound to live with for the rest of my life. But I do not do drugs. Thank you. That was a tough one. Yeah?
You've not answered one. He also asked you that when you are governor of Kiambu, you snubbed invitations and summons to attend.
I'm going there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it was...
the perception of being high-handed.
It is... pardon?
Go on and answer the questions.
Yes. Yes. In the beginning, when governors were being called to Senate, there was a general feeling that we should not come to Senate as an independent government. But when it was clear through court decisions that governors would appear, we started appearing. And I want to be on record here, Mr. Speaker. I came to this Senate House to answer questions of senators. For 3 consecutive years, Kiambu had appeared. As a matter of fact, I came to the clerk of that committee, and I said they can ask the chair, I think it was Professor Nyang' Nyong'o then, that should any county be invited to the Senate and they do not appear, Kiambu can appear. It's just next door in short notice, even half an hour. And that's how we managed to go through our audit queries for Kiambu for 3 years. So I should be able to appear before the House of Parliament, both Senate and the National Assembly, to answer any questions that may arise, and also carry along the staff of the ministry. Sometimes you ask questions. I've been to this house. Sometimes you ask questions, and the minister is given questions by technocrats to bring to the house, and they're never accepted. I should be able to come with the PS or whoever it is and tell them, now you need to answer this question because it's being asked by MPs who represent the people. It's the people asking. So I will honor invitations to appear. What was the other part?
Are you arrogant,
yes,
hard-headed, and high-handed?
Mr. Speaker, I have a very serious face, just like yourself. And that may sometimes be confused to me, but I'm very straightforward. And I do not beat about the bush. I say things as they are. And this is where people wonder whether doing things right or doing the right things is the thing to do. I believe in doing things right, but doing them right. So that sometimes it appears. I have a very strong personality on putting things in order. And that is why I was able to bring order to Kiambu, a very difficult county.
How come they rejected you after 1 term?
Mr. Speaker, that is a long discussion you and I would have because you know how elections are done in this country.
Yes, Junet?
Mr. Speaker, the nominee has answered by saying he's not high-handed, he's not arrogant because he has a very serious face. So does he use his face and his bald head to scare people?
Speaker, maybe because there's also a question CS nominee did not answer, but probably just in defense of him, Honorable Speaker, on that, or without being seen to defend him, from a question by my colleague Junet, is probably a character trait of people from Kiambu of being straightforward, saying it as it is, and we are at times misconstrued to be arrogant. But that's just the way we are, Honorable Speaker, those of us who come from Kiambu.
So is that what you said, Leader, at the burial of the mother of the Speaker?
Honorable Speaker, CS, my question on the big tech companies is how they're exploiting, and in fact, that article spoke of the work that is usually done by students, housewives, and groups of people who are in a weak position. So what I wanted to hear from you is what policy proposals would you be having to ensure, one, that the big tech companies first conform to our labor laws. Two, they are not exploiting these people because they're in a weak position. Because what they are doing is taking advantage of our students because they can be paid $2. $2 translates to about 300 shillings an hour. But in the US, nobody will be paid $2 for whatever mundane task you are given. So I'd want to hear what policy proposals you'd bring into the ministry to ensure that we enforce our labor laws with the big tech companies, as much as we're in a third world and developing country, but also big tech companies are not taking advantage of our resource, because these young people who are tech savvy are a resource to this country and to the world, and therefore they ought to be compensated properly. That's the bit CS, I think you did get the question.
He's a CS nominee. He's not
CS
a
nominee.
CS yet.
Yes, it's a good prayer, Mr. Speaker. You will realize, Mheshimiwa Ishongwa, that it's not only affecting Kenyans on outside jobs. Even the local content creators, like in music, that put their stuff on YouTube, they rarely get value for their content. So I should be able to bring into Parliament a bill that should be able to regulate how much money content creators are paid, just like the coffee industry. There are brokers in this business of digital economy who take advantage. You'll be surprised that probably a job like that is paid for $200 and only $20 or $10 that get to this. So we should be able to do that through some regulation and some law. And knowing how vibrant our young people are, they would be happy, especially the Gen Zs. We can redirect their energy into using that energy productively to make money in the digital economy. So I should be at the forefront in terms of bringing laws or amendments to our laws so that our labor laws are applicable. But again, challenges of enforcement is something we would need to worry about how to enforce, because the employing agency is an American agency, is a British agency. How do we apply it online here? So, and those are things that the technical people in the ministry should be able to advise.
Posing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, our Speaker. Honorable Kabogo, people listening to you and watching you, particularly from rural areas, are worried. They have given me their messages. And they're saying, how much does Honorable Kabogo know this country? How much does he travel out of Kiambu? Out of Nairobi? How much? Like, for example, do you know anywhere, like in Pokot, any location in Pokot? As an example, Honorable Kabogo. Why? Because of the Minister for ICT now is actually about the rural areas in terms of communication, you know, in terms of telephone communication and so on and so forth, which actually lacks in this country, Honorable Kabogo, and particularly pastoral areas, conflict areas, where if we had this communication, maybe it would have helped us to reduce these conflicts. And therefore, they're asking me to ask you and tell them, how much have you traveled out of Kiambu? Number two, what are you going to do should Parliament approve you and the President appoints you? What are you going to do with the Universal Service Fund? You know that sits in CAK. And that fund is supposed now to do what I'm telling you, making our country reachable in terms of telecommunication. But it's not being used to the best of... There are many Kenyans who cannot call Nairobi now. So, Honorable Kabogo, how much have you traveled out of Kiambu?
Hold, Coach. Just not Honorable Kabogo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Kabogo, our cyberspace has become extremely robust. And I have a totally different view. Many people will probably vilify the young people out there who have different arguments and are doing all sorts of things in that space. But in this very same seat that you are, 4 months ago, I asked the then nominee, who is now out, what she will do, particularly with the space of the many young people, enterprising young people, whose source of employment will have otherwise been in that space. I give you an example. Mulot, for instance, is a small town, but extremely robust in terms of business. That is particularly coming from the cyberspace. So many young people, but many of it borders on criminality. And I posed a question at that time to the CS nominee that what will she do differently to make sure that you can harness the young people there and have a resource in them. She promised that she was actually going to look into it. She was going to probably even build an institute and tap on the knowledge of these young people and onboard them into genuine business and transactions online. Of course, she didn't do it. I really want to peg my hope, assuming that you are approved, and I really want to hear your thoughts. What are your plans to these many young people out there? You look at the communication there on the internet, and you can see frustration. And many people are educated. Can we tap this otherwise unuseful communication on the internet and make a resource out of it, make those people earn their income from that space, and in a way, we will get rid of the negative communication that we have in the cyberspace. What are your thoughts, Honorable Kabogo?
Naisula, take the next, Honorable Kabogo.
Thank you, Chairman. And one of my questions was raised by Honorable Kosing on the issue of ensuring that every part of the country, Kenyans can access telecommunication services as a basic right or need. My question is on the issue of data protection. There's been a conversation in the country about how people are accessing individuals' data. When you talk about people who are to be arrested or to be found and their data is accessible, through the telecommunication providers, it cuts the same way. Members of Parliament here also, their data is plastered all over, and they get kusalimiwa. I would like to get your views on data protection of individuals in the country for everybody, because it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways for everybody, and how you're going to ensure that individual data is actually protected. And then the last question is that many Kenyans have suffered financial losses from SIM swap fraud and other electronic money-related scams. If approved, what strategies will the ministry adopt to address, mitigate, and prevent SIM swap fraud and ensure online safety for all consumers?
Yes, can you answer those?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can't remember the name.
Honorable Posing.
Posing, yes.
I thought all members introduced themselves.
Kabogo, Mr. Speaker, Kabogo is very widely traveled in Kenya. I know every corner of Kenya. I remember holding a harambe in his constituency with one of the ex-former ministers. So I have traveled. At some point when I was younger, Mr. Speaker, I would fly all over the country, so I am conversant with Kenya. And be assured that if I'm confirmed, this digital divide will be a thing of the past. As you have said, USF funds are there available, probably to a tune of 115 million if my research, 115 billion if my research is correct. And we should be able, if you look at the master plan of the ICT department, is to connect Kenya. And I want to be the minister, Mr. Speaker, if confirmed, who connected Kenya 100%. Mr. Speaker, you realize that from TIMS, Kenya government owns 20% of the internet in that cable. and you will find only 2% of that is tapped and utilized by Kenyans and more so government departments. So I should be the one who will make sure that that 20% is spread in the whole republic. And for cases where security is a threat, we have satellite services like what Starlink is doing now. So government should be able to have a discussion with satellite internet providers so that the entire republic is connected. I'm cognizant of the fact that there's a plan to put 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable to connect the country, but also cognizant of the fact that most of those cables are not lit. So if I'm confirmed and going to the minister, I should be able to make sure that the cables that have been put so far are lit. And Kenyans can enjoy internet services in the entire republic. Cyberspace from Honorable Koech, and what we will do to make sure that we harness the energy of the young men. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I want to be that minister that engaged the Gen Zs and made sure that their energy was converted, and they will be so engaged such that they will be able to make money, business in the digital platform. And Mr. Speaker, when I was in Kiambu, I did see the plight of the young and how poor the young men and women were. And they had gone to school, we had pushed them through school, and we told them, you study and you will get a job. But there were no jobs after university. And I really got surprised at some point where graduates and doctors were very happy about Kazi Mtaani. And that's a very sad story for a graduate to go to Kazi Mtaani. So I started a Biashara Fund where we set aside 300 million shillings for small loans to young boys and girls, and mostly women, disadvantaged communities in society. And we entered into a contract with the bank so that the bank will do the core business of lending, but use our money at an agreed interest rate. So I want to be the one that will persuade government that we can put resources aside and do these startup hubs where young men and women will be able to employ themselves. This is besides, Mr. Speaker, the 1,450 ward hubs that the president has initiated. I have a feeling that every one of those ward hubs would bring forth about 10 so that the young men and women can get access to affordable loans. You realize that today the non-collateralized loans in Kenya are charging interest of up to 20–25%. And really there is no business a young man would do and be able to pay interest of 20%. So if we can get non-collateralized loans by government or a collaboration between government and, for example, KCB, loans will be given to these young men, and it's startup loans. And what we did in Kiambu, we gave loans through LPO loaning so that you don't give them cash. So that if it's computers, they would get computers, and they would get routers and all these things that you need in a digital hub. And then they would use the digital hubs for a period of 2 years, for example, during which they should be able to get money and support themselves. So that's one of the things that we could initiate. Data protection, I think, from the Honorable Lesuda. You know, I understand the concern of data being harvested. And if you listen on social media, you will see people attacking that Safaricom has released people's numbers and then they are being given to Kenya Revenue Authority. I say from the front that if that happens, it is illegal because we have laws that protect data. I am told, and I want to reliably believe, that only a security threat would cause sharing of data. But I would want to be the one that makes sure that private and personal data is protected by government if I were to be nominated. It is a serious threat to persons, it is a serious threat to families, and I would want to make sure that, again, dialogue between parties, discussions online and offline and in places like Parliament, opening public portals to discuss data security, data protection, etc. would help so that we create a modus operandi sort of on what we say and what we, because some of these things may just be not true. I do not want to say it's not true, but it may be so.
I think, Honorable Kabogo, I think it's better to correct you on the issues like, it's not really the phone companies that have, like Safaricom, that are guilty of giving out people's data. It's usually those companies that ask for your details to get bonga points or so many points when you go shopping. Those are the ones who have your data, and that's where the fault has actually been, not the official service providers.
Correct, I'm corrected, but that too happens.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that when you go to Carrefour and buy something online and it's delivered to you, the next thing you see is a message from Carrefour asking you whether you will be buying the same things again, meaning that the number you used to pay, your M-Pesa number, has been harvested from the mall and it is being used. So we should be able to regulate that by legislation, and I'm sure it is doable. Again, remember the extent of use of the social media platforms. We have the most expert young men in hacking. So hacking is also an issue where people just hack into places like Carrefour and be able to see who is shopping what and how much capacity they have. So it's an entire complex industry, but Kenyans are innovative and we have the capacity to deal with those problems.
Thank you. Mary Emase.
Thank you, Chairman. My question to the nominee. This country's been battling with a lot of gender-based violence, femicide, and many others. And I want to take you to 2011. In 2011, a young university woman with a beautiful and promising life, Miss Mercy Keino, was found dead in unclear circumstances, just like many of them that we lose through femicide. And that was after being invited to a party where it is alleged you were the host. That tragic incident left so many Kenyans, so many questions in Kenyans' minds, and still remains in the memory of many Kenyans. Kindly expound on this and explain whether you are fit to hold office in light of these allegations. Thank you.
Dawood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Kabogo, you've been a governor. But I think you know the docket you're going into is the ICT and communication. And the Kenya Kwanza government needs more communication out there than anything else. I believe you know about holography. If you do, please, you will tell us how you would want to deploy it, even if the president cannot make it into one area to communicate, or a minister. They do not have to go in 2-3 places. It can be done through holography. Would you explore that idea? Today, I don't know if you're aware of the Kenya National Artificial Intelligence Strategy Paper 2025-2030 has been released. A draft has been released. I don't know if you're aware of that. If you're not, what you will find, would you then want to change what has already been circulated as a draft, or how will you enrich it? You have said you will get bored very easily. That's why you left the job you were doing. I hope the job you're now looking for, the right now, which we are vetting you for, you won't get bored so fastly. The last one is regarding KBC and Communications Authority and Helios.
And?
Helios, the one which was buying telecom. Helio, I'm corrected. I don't know how you have communicated with CAK, there is a debt which CAK has got of KBC, which has not paid about 6 billion shillings. How are you going to tackle that? And how are you going to tackle the retirees of KBC who are not getting their pensions and the lump sums from the year 2021? Thank you, Chair.
Ferdinand.
Chairman.
May I switch on off your mic?
I think traveling around and interacting with the people from this region, the East African countries actually are looking at Kenya as a more developed, because I've been to Tanzania, Uganda, and even Southern Sudan. And I've realized that the whole Kenya to be more developed in terms of the ICT facilitation. And I just want to see, because they can, instead of people traveling, what have you, how are you going to improve, how are you going to coordinate this infrastructure with the other countries? If we met you, the Minister for Communication. Secondly, I think what we are seeing around is a lot of indiscipline among our youths. And you are trying to explain, but the youths needs a program, a specific program to be able to discipline them going forward. If we leave them the way they are, this country is going to be thrown to the dogs. So what programs will you come with? Being, of course, you are saying you know this discipline. What are you going to come up with this program to be able to discipline our children so that going forward, there's discipline in the area, particularly in your country? Thank you.
Last on this batch, Morugara.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nominee, just put a star against KBC because we are not very good at keeping our national heritage. I mean, the successor in title, KBC, took over from VOK. And VOK was quite developed those days when we used to have it as our main station. Today it's a pale shandal. And we are worried that other entities in other countries, which are possibly national broadcasting corporations, like BBC, South African Broadcasting Corporation, have been able to peak, but KBC is going down. What measures are you going to put in place to transform KBC so that from your tenure, the time you take it up, if you're approved, we now start seeing KBC coming up to a point that it will become a competitor of BBC, South African Broadcasting Corporation, Voice of America, and everybody else. Secondly, a while ago, a very noble idea was introduced, which was to digitally register Kenyans through a number called Huduma number. We were given a very good story of what it was going to be, that you will get your number for those who are being born from birth, and you would carry it to the grave, such that it would not be replicated, and we would always be able to tell who that person is. That was from the office of the president, but principally it should have been from the Minister of ICT. Is it a good idea to have Kenyans registered under one card, under one number, like the Huduma number, which is going to be your everything? And if it is in your favor, how would you protect that under the Data Protection Act? Thank you.
Nominee, you can answer those four.
Mr. Speaker, the first one was from
Honorable
Mary.
Yes.
Is that so? Mr. Speaker, the issue of 2011 of Mercy Kaino, a very tragic story, Mr. Speaker. The honorable member has said it is alleged that I had invited people to a party. Mr. Speaker, that is not true. This is just a situation where you find yourself at a place at the wrong time. It was a public place, a restaurant, and there were several groups of people in that place, Mr. Speaker. And the issue of the death of Masekino came to me 2 weeks after she had been buried. And even if I had met her the following day after that hotel or restaurant, I would never have noticed her. It is a sad story, and Kenyan life was lost, but I sincerely and truly had nothing to do with it. Suffice to say, Mr. Speaker, an inquiry, I think it was inquiry 22 of, I think 2012, was done at Milimani Magistrates Court. And all persons of interest.
An inquiry or an inquest?
An inquest, sorry.
Yes.
I am not a lawyer like yourself, Mr. Speaker, so some of these terms.
The two are different.
Yes. So it was done, and it took about a year and a half, and all persons of interest were invited, even those that had not been there.
Including yourself?
Including myself. I was governor, but I managed to be able to sit in there for 6 days, cross-examination, examination in chief, etc. And I was exonerated by the judgment of that court, a court that made a finding that the late Masekino was a victim of a hit and run by a truck. And that matter rests there. It is a sad story. There were videos played of the scene in the restaurant. And when I was speaking to the father of Masekino at the inquest, I was urging him really not to watch those videos, because they were videos that were not very nice for a parent. I sympathize with the family of Masekino. May her soul rest in peace. But I am certain that as a child, and a God-fearing child, I believe that one day the truck driver or whoever it is that was in the truck that killed Masekino will be able to come out and say, unfortunately, I kept quiet, but I did it. And I hope that day will come. I have a copy of the inquiry report with me if anyone would be interested to have a look at. It's a public document. Honorable Dawood, I am not aware of the 2025 bill, but he asked me what I would do if it's there, whether I would reverse. I would have to probably study it closely with the technocrats in the ministry and understand what has informed the bill, what it wants to cure, and look at it with those that are technocrats in different divisions in the ministry to make sure that we bring to law a useful legislature that will help. I'm not sure whether I understood your
It's a strategy draft, not a bill.
Right, so I'm well advised. So that's what we will do. Look at it and go through it with those that have proposed that draft. Holography it's a welcome idea. It's of today's world, and that's what is happening. So it's something we could embrace. But again, with AI, we have to be careful about what is disseminated, because through AI, many things are happening today. I was asked to, KBC, the Horace loan, and what we would do with Kenya Broadcasting Corporation as an icon, a historical sort of thing for Kenya from VOK. In my mind, Mr. Speaker, KBC needs a total overhaul. It needs to be reassessed, how it's operating. so that if you look at BBC and other, Al Jazeera and others, they have a contribution from state that funds public broadcasting, so that KBC may have a wing of public broadcasting and the commercial division that takes care of its commercial entity. I've talked to a couple of people and they say KBC has got a lot of land. They could sell their land and revamp KBC financially. From the school of thought, Mr. Speaker, when you sell the first parcel and sort out the employees' emoluments and pension and statutory deductions that have not been paid, and probably buy a few cameras and things like that, they go back to the same hole a year later, they will pick the next plots and sell until the 8th one is sold and they have no plot to sell. We should be able to go in and reassess the viability of KBC as it stands. I have come across during briefing something that says they want to borrow from, I think it's Spain, a tune of 12 billion to revamp KBC by buying new equipment, broadcasting equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And that, to me, sounded very worrying. Because you will look at other broadcasting stations like, for lack of a better example, like Citizen. And if you assess the sort of money they have used to make their broadcasting stations what it is, 12 billion is completely exaggerated. I should be able to go in there, send out a team to the world online, and find out what sort of equipment KBC requires and how it needs to be brought back into a world-class broadcasting station. If you put your TV on this evening, Mr. Speaker, and you put KBC, and there are young men and women in that house, you will almost get a bashing. What are you doing in that station? I want to be the one who sorts KBC. If you put it in your house, people will want to watch because it's got the right content in terms of broadcasting, entertainment, and things like that. You'll find a radio station from KBC. If you drive up the mountains, any part of Kenya, you will keep losing the wave because they say the equipments are obsolete. There is also a situation in the world that is happening now, Mr. Speaker, where you don't have to buy equipment. You can lease equipment. And the lessor of equipment is responsible for managing and keeping the equipment running. And if it fails, they bring in new equipment. That may be cheaper. Because if you buy equipment today and they say the life of equipment is about 5 years, so does it mean KBC should spend another 12 billion shillings in reorganizing KBC? I believe it can be a world-class broadcasting station with support from government for public broadcasting in public interest. But the other division that is commercial should be able to sustain itself. And that is something that I think we can do fairly quickly as a quick win. You talk of a debt. As I was receiving briefs, Mr. Speaker, there is debt to Telecom, debt from so-and-so, debt owed to CA. There's so much cross-debt in government sagas that some people say we will not pay because we are owed. You find a place like Telecom, when it comes to paying, they say it will affect public in this way or the other. But when it comes to their own dues of paying, they say they are private. So these are some of the things that we need to be able to deal with so that Caesar is given what is Caesar's. There's a lot of money out there owned across these agencies. And probably we need also to find whether we can legislate on how debt across government agencies can be controlled, like in any business. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about debt owed from one agency to another. Through this ministry, if I'm confirmed, Mr. Speaker, we should be able to digitize entire government business so that information is available. Even the issue that is very dear to the public in general in terms of pending bills is a very big issue in the country on pending bills. And you realize, Mr. Speaker, that Kenyans don't look at pending bills as a very serious concern, because in my mind, pending bills, Mr. Speaker, is money borrowed from public. When a governor takes roads and gives contract of roads to Kenyans, for example, and he has not budgeted how those roads will be paid, a commitment is done, and a Kenyan entrepreneur will put in their money and do the roads and never get paid. So there's a lot of borrowing. You will find this to the tune, I think, of 150 billion owed to Kenyans by government agencies. So this is something that we need to deal with as a country. But if we have a system, like what I would want to propose, if we have a system that captures procurement and payments, at the same time, the control of budget will be able to see in real time and to stop some of these things. But because we wait for a year or 18 months until the audit reports come to the House for people to be invited here for questions, we should be able to digitize government business so that information is available to everyone and sundry for action to be taken to stop some of these things. So I imagine at some point in 2 years, Mr. Speaker, if I'm confirmed, the Speaker of the National Assembly should be able to see exactly what the MPs are doing wherever it is they are on legislative business. The President of the Republic from one dashboard should be able to see what is happening in development programs in Kenya. As we did in Kiambu, I could tell that from my office, what is happening in every ministry, 10 ministries in Kiambu, and would make decisions on time. There would be a management information system that gives an amber light when you open your document, and it tells you here something is about to go wrong. Red means it's chaotic, everything is bad. And information available in real time should be able to take us to the next frontier.
Yes, Owen. Ferdinand, oh yeah.
Did I answer?
No, you didn't touch on Ferdinand's question.
Ferdinand is East African. First and foremost, it is said Kenya is the Silicon Savannah of Africa. It is top #1 in Africa in terms of ICT and digital economy. But that does not put us in the first world. So it's a lot that needs to be done in terms of fast connectivity, so that we have high-speed internet in the whole country, ICT skills in terms of equipping the young with skills to be able to use these platforms. But again, our landlocked country neighbors should be able to use our infrastructure to get internet to Uganda, to Rwanda, and those other places. If only the bureaucracy between governments is sorted, so that we can take advantage of the position that we occupy in terms of ICT and digital economy in Africa. So we stand quite up there, but that we could take advantage.
Owen Bayer. Huduma number, yes. What happened to Huduma number?
Yes. One thing, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of skepticism in the public about their information. Always people thinking government wants their information to give to KRA, government wants their information to do this. And we have to continue engaging ourselves as a public on why isn't it necessary to have information of Kenyan people in one database. For as long as that information is safe in the hands of government, it is important that government if you walk into Dubai now and you give in your passport, if you've ever been there before, anything, they have got your stuff there. If you are exiting Dubai, they tell you to look at the screen and you're taking your identity. The time you're kicked out of Dubai, you will never go back to Dubai again because your information is right there. So I think myself it's a myth that we need to deal with in terms of educating ourselves and having this open dialogue that government is not always bad. Because, you know, that is a sort of general feeling I have now. But it's working, it's something we can work on. So I believe it's important for any state to be able to know its citizenry, right from birth all the way to the death certificate. So I have nothing against Huduma number myself, but we need to go in there and find out, are there other things that are being done that look like Huduma number? Because every other time this is changing, that is changing. I believe we can have one document that suffices for all services and avoid spending public money on some of these things.
Owen Bayer.
Thank you. This is the fourth time
Take
you're calling
the next round.
The fourth time you're calling my question now.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to ask the nominee this question that touches on collective responsibility as a binding note for Cabinet. You're aware recent events have shown that a CS could actually call a press conference to complain about and seek questions for government he serves in based on a personal issue or personal matter. And if you are given an opportunity, Honorable Kabogo, how would you handle this issue of collective responsibility? And that would you have the discipline to really stay in government and say this collective responsibility, or will you just, as a politician, you know you're a politician, go the political way and seek public sympathy? Or would you handle it differently? Secondly, Honorable Speaker, our question on expired data. You know, when you buy data, you don't use it, it expires. And I see on my phone a lot of data that I can't use. You know, a lot of it I can't use because it's expired, but it is there. But when it comes to consumer protection, why would I be forced to use data when I don't want to use it? It's my property, I bought it. Why would a telco want really to control how I use it? And how are you going to bring in policy and regulations on the same to ensure that Kenyans are not robbed by telcos in terms of expired data? I think there are millions of expired data out there. And Kenya are suffering. They have it, they can't use it because somebody decided they can't use it. You know, and lastly, Konza Metropolis was a great idea. We see it when we pass going to Mombasa and we see the development that is there. But the idea behind the Konza Metropolis is that we're going to have cutting-edge technology coming out of it. Cutting-edge technology, that we are Silicon Savannah. And that was the base for the Silicon Savannah, that we would see a lot of things, apps and all that coming out. But what we see a lot is buildings. We see they come out to install internet, simple things that would have been done from Nairobi. But we have a whole lot of a metropolis, and we would like to see it work. If appointed as a Cabinet Secretary for ICT, what would you do different to ensure that the Silicon Savannah that President Kibaki envisaged then and the Konza Metropolis would come to fruition as soonest for Kenyans, for the many young people who are looking for jobs and getting disturbed on the internet and, you know, on phone? They would be there producing high-end technology, but now they're not there because we haven't actualized what President Kibaki wanted us to have. I thank you.
Robert Bui.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, you know, recently we had an international company that was also taking advantage, like these other big techs, and mining, data mining. You know, we found queues at KICC of young people lining up to have their irises, I think, you know, copied. And it took the intervention of the National Assembly, actually, to stop that. So what will you do to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again? Now, there's also the issue of pending bills that are owed to media houses by the government. And, of course, that has led to some of these media houses closing. And, you know, journalists being owed a lot of money. What will you do to ensure that they are back in business? And finally, what do you want to tell those young Kenyans on social media, because this ministry is responsible for social media, and who are actually out there saying that they believe this position should have been given to a very young techno-savvy youth, in furtherance of the Article 10 of the Constitution, which is principles of good governance. Thank you, Speaker.
Let's take one more. In fact, two more. Mule.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Kabogo, if you are approved by this House, and I heard you speak about Starlink, owned by the billionaire Enoch Marx from the US. What will you do to make sure that you protect the investment done by Kenyan companies like Safaricom, Telecom, and any other investment which has been done in the country to make sure that Starlink does not come here and kill Safaricom overnight? You know the number of people working for Safaricom. The revenue collected by government from Safaricom is the highest. If we allow this under your watch, I think the Gen Zs will not let you smile. So we want to hear your views on that, because it's a connectivity issue and investment by Kenyan taxpayers' money in this country, and you must protect it. We need to hear that. Secondly, Vision 2030, which has emphasized a lot on development on knowledge-based economy, highlighting the importance of ICT in this country through education to enhance productivity and efficiency, is key. And you are getting into this ministry whereby we have only 5 years to actualize the Vision 2030. That's 5 years to go. And we still have the Konza City, which is supposed to, and it was one of the flagship of this, to make sure that digitization and ICT integration in the schools is well implemented. What will you do in the ministry to fast track this and probably leave a clear legacy to make sure that the vision for Honorable the late Mwai Kibaki of Vision 2030 is achieved?
Thank you. Raso, I'll jump you to Sharia. He says he wants to ask a question and shortly leave for a meeting. Sharia? You are going together?
They are fasting.
No, it had nothing to do with religion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mheshimiwa Kabogo, there was a recent public notice issued by the Communication Authority on tax compliance for mobile devices in Kenya, which has raised concerns among consumers and stakeholders regarding its implementation. To your knowledge, what is the intention of this notice and its relation to the government agenda on telecommunication security?
Thank you. So, Raso, if you are going together, then I'll give you the opportunity.
Mr. Speaker, he seems not to have gotten the question. He wants me to repeat it, is it? Okay.
Through the chair.
Through the chair, okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There was a recent public notice issued by the Communication Authority on tax compliance for mobile devices in Kenya, which had raised concerns among consumers and stakeholders. To your knowledge, what is the intention of this notice and its relation to government agenda and telecommunication security? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Okay, Raso. Honorable Raso.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I walked in late. My name is Dido Raso, MP for Saku. Honorable Kabogo, if the House approves your nomination, your ministry will be mouthful: information, communication, and the digital economy. The world has moved there. Actually, you will be sitting at the center of the world. The problem in Kenya today is about cyber security, about cyber bullying, and cyber attacks, and cyber crime. Currently, we have 20,000 services on eCitizen. If those sites actually are attacked, it means Kenya will be closed for a minute, for a day, even for a month. If you'll be given this position, there's the balance between securing Kenya, but also opening the digital economy for business. How have you placed yourself that Kenya runs but at the same time, Kenya is secure. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
You can respond to those 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
The first one was from, I think, Honorable Bayer.
Owen Bayer.
About collective responsibility. That is the issue, the whole world, where collective responsibility is supposed to be. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. And you talked about a recent situation where a minister of government came out and broadcasted dissent or his dissatisfaction on the issue of abductions. And I simply, from where I sit, and you said I'm a politician, I'm more a leader than a politician, because the politician thinks about the next election and the leader thinks about the next generation. So I belong to that other side. But from where I sit, that was very irresponsible of the Honorable J.B. Muturi, if I may say so, Speaker, without saying more. If I was or I were on his position or in his position, I would have taken my dissent to the appointing authority. And if I was afraid of facing the appointing authority, I would go to cabinet and air it there. And if I'm not satisfied, tender my resignation. I resign because I don't believe in what the government is doing in terms of abductions. But politicians, that's what they do. I hope I have answered you. Then there was a question of expired data. Mr. Speaker, I personally have been a victim of buying data. And the next week or so, I was told my data had expired. And if you go to my Twitter handle, I did express my concerns to Safaricom. And I said we should stop now using Safaricom. At that point in time, that was my belief. And I explained that you cannot go to a shop, Mr. Speaker, and buy sugar, and then come to my house and tell me how not to use or how to use that sugar. And I think I want to inform the member, since then, I really had a back and forth with Safaricom. Now they give you an option of buying, I'm not speaking for Safaricom, but they have an option of you buying data without expiry or data with expiry. So ujitume, ununue, whatever it is that you feel is good for you. But that is, it was very disappointing for me that day, and I believe for most Kenyans.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Owen?
I mean, I think we need a policy, because if you make expirable data more expensive and data that does not expire cheaper, then what you're doing is you're robbing citizens. So I think we need a policy to stop this daylight theft, because there's something called consumer protection in this country. And I think the Minister of ICT owes this country a duty of care to protect consumers of data, to just have non-expirable data. Thank you.
So Mr. Speaker, I agree entirely with the member. And if I'm confirmed, I'll fix it. I'll fix it.
Go ahead, Robert Mbui's question.
Yeah, the other part of Honorable Bayer's question was on the Konza City.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, you realize that this was a dream 16 years ago. And things were different 16 years ago. And from where I sit, if I'm confirmed and going, we shall put the issue of Konza City on the table and reevaluate whether the original dream still stands and what it is we need to do with the very huge investments that have been put in Konza. And as a businessman, I have asked myself time and again, why haven't I ever thought of going to Konza and invest there as an astute Kenyan businessman? And in my mind, Mr. Speaker, is that there is nothing attractive from the businessman point of view, because I've seen others come up in Dubai. I have invested there. I've seen others in other places of the world. So really, Mr. Speaker, we need to reevaluate the concept of Konza City. A lot of money has been put in Konza on infrastructure. Phase 1, almost 95% complete. But my question is, what is it we need to do to make Kenyans themselves and foreign investors be attracted to investing in Konza? You know, Nairobi is competing with Konza. So we must have an incentive scheme that sends people and international investors into Konza, like tax holiday, duty-free status, land available at almost zero rate so that they can put huge investments, is to create the demand and the need of people to invest in Konza. And that would be a game changer. There's something in the world that is happening now called tokenizing. We can raise money from public and from investors and buy tokens for Konza so that it can build itself. But always when it's a government project, people tend to want to go slow on again, bureaucracy, again, the way decisions are made. I have had a little bit of a briefing on Konza, and there are many things that we will put on the table and see whether we still have to do business that way. I'm told Konza City is building hubs. The 1450, or the first 100 hectare, which is the authority responsible with connectivity, will do internet. Konza will do the structure, and hectare will connect, from what I understand, and then probably give an ISP to run. Is it really the right thing to do for Konza, to build these hubs or concentrate on the core mandate of Konza? This is questions I will need to ask until I'm convinced that that is the way to do this business. So there's a lot that will be on the table of the ICT minister in as far as Konza City is concerned. Because 16 years ago, it was a great idea to have Konza as one smart city. But today, you would see that we need to devolve and have smart cities almost in every county. And that's the way the world is going today. Why don't we have the Elon Musks of this world investing in Konza City? Do we risk losing the total amount of money that has been invested in Konza? Then there is land being given. For how long has this land being given has been going on? What is the criteria? Are these people going to invest, or they are people who speculate? These are things that the ministry needs to look into and reorganize Konza the year today and not 16 years ago. That's from an outsider's point of view. Data mining. This is something that I'm not sure who asked, but this is something that
you're not sure? You're not paying attention?
Sure. Second?
You are not sure who asked?
I'm not sure. I didn't get the name. That's why I'm saying.
Robert Mbui.
I know it is a member sitting just there. So sorry, I did not get your name. But be that as it may be.
Does that tell a story about you? All these members introduce themselves to you.
Mr. Speaker, sometimes you do not hear the pronunciation of the name, so I do not want to take the risk of calling someone in a name that is not their name.
And the name tags are also there.
Unfortunately,
he is Honorable Robert Mbui. Go ahead and answer his question.
I am physically challenged from seeing far. Honorable Mbui, you will excuse me, but data mining, as I had said earlier, it is something that needs to be checked. It needs to be regulated. What sort of data is going into whose hands? You did give an example of a company that was collecting, I think, data from Kenyans, and they were paying. So government should be able to regulate who is it that is collecting data from Kenyans. And I think that's not a big deal to do. We should be able to quickly.
In fact, should we allow any foreigner to come and mine our data?
In my mind, we should not unless it is done through a government agency. And for what reason, Mr. Speaker, we would want to give data of Kenyans to foreigners? For me, that is a straight no. But you find that Kenyans are very enterprising, Mr. Speaker. When the rumor was that you get 10,000 shillings after you register, sometimes Kenyans don't give a damn of some of those things as long as there is some enterprise happening. So we should be able to engage people and them understand that it is wrong for them to give data to anyone. So I want to tell Kenyans to be careful on who you allow to take information from yourself. But if we have rules and regulations on how this thing is done, it can be controlled. Now, Mr. Speaker, I think it's Honorable Mule. I got...
Yes, Robert?
You haven't finished my questions on pending bills and what Kenyans on social media are saying about this docket.
I didn't get the question on pending bills, what it was.
Yeah, it was about pending bills that the government owes to media houses that have led to some of them collapsing and journalists not being paid so much money. So what will you do when you get into office? And the other one was what Kenyans are saying on social media. They're saying that this docket should have been given to a young, techno-savvy youth in furtherance of Article 10 of the Constitution. So what do you have to say about that?
Let me deal with the first one because it's fairly easy. The issue of pending bills, Mr. Speaker, I had addressed the issue of pending bills to Kenyans, not now media owners, Kenyans themselves who've built roads, who've built hospitals, and their money is held by government. I'm saying we must have a way of controlling pending bills. And if we digitize government procurement, media houses procurement, no one will go and spend money they cannot pay. And I gave an example of a governor who walks into office, like I left office, somebody else walked in, and quickly they want to commit money for roads, for either one reason to build roads or another reason. And Kenyans quickly run and put their money into those programs or projects and to wait for many years not to be paid. There must be a way we can legislate on the issue of committing funds that you do not have. But if I am confirmed.
Well, there is already a legislation. The PFM Act says it's a criminal offense to procure goods or services in a public entity without an attendant budget.
I am guided, Mr. Speaker, but you will see pending bills of some counties. For example, not even media houses. A county has a pending bill list of 7 billion, but their budget for development for 1 year is 1.1 billion. So really out there are many criminals that need to be brought to book. Very many criminals, including government itself. When you procure services of a media house and you do not pay, again, it touches on the same thing, procurement. And you will understand, Mr. Speaker, that there used to be something called e-procurement, which doesn't work. I am sure it doesn't work for a reason. Because if e-procurement works and if IFMIS works, and the controller of budget is in between, you would never be able to commit money to projects for as long as those systems are working. So again, the laws are made here. Sometimes they are not enforced, like you're talking of the misuse of computer and cyberbullying and all those things. The law is there. It's just the enforcement. Suffice to say, there is now a new app.
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to clarify that some of the pending bills, the Honorable Nominee, it's not necessarily that there was no budget that was there. There was budget and government procured the services, but there was no exchequer when the service was done. There was no money. You know, government, a budget is a document of intent. So they go and collect money. If they don't collect enough money, then they have no money to pay. That is the way it is most of the time. And if you can deal with the pending bill in your ministry in the manner that you understand, the better for the government.
Mr. Speaker, if you allow me to school my friend, Honorable Junet, a little bit on the issue of pending bills, is that the money was not there then. But if you look at it aggregately, the total is that if you have closed your books of the year and you have 7 billion as pending bills, and the following year it turns to 9, it means there was no money for that particular project. Otherwise, if it was, you should be able to clear your bills in the successive year. But how you can accumulate 7 billion as your pending bills, even if there was no money exchequer then, it means there was a 6-point-something billion that you spent that you should not have spent.
Mr. Speaker, let me ask the nominee this question then. The pending bills, for example, for roads, is 700 billion shillings at the national level now. So does that mean that all that procurement was done without a budget?
The simple answer, Mheshimiwa, is as the Speaker says, the PMF Act stipulates how you spend government money.
Speaker.
So, Dawood, what is it? Can he respond to that first?
Yeah, it's regarding the pending bills he's speaking about. I want to ask him, because he was the governor of Kiambu, when he left, what amount of pending bill did he leave behind for his successor?
Mr. Speaker, that is an easier one. It was about 300 million, and these were projects running between my the second last year of the term, and we would have been able to pay those pending bills in the following year. But today, I hear it stands to 6-point-something billion. I would not say why.
Can you respond quickly? We're running out of time. Go to Mule's question.
Mule.
Then Raso, then Sharia.
To protect Kenya's investors, business, and the Gen Z, sometimes government buries its head in the sand and pretends sometimes not to know exactly what is happening. Mr. Speaker, if I'm confirmed and I go to the minister, we should be able to bring these things to light and discuss openly on the problems that face the country. You also asked me why me and not a Gen Z. Mr. Speaker, this country has room for all of us. Gen Zs, millennials, and yourself and I, Mr. Speaker. So that
you didn't appoint yourself, so
no, I'm
you don't have to belabor that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for
go on and answer the question.
Your guidance.
Yes,
I think I have answered Mr. Mule's questions.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sorry to call for a point of order.
Who is that?
Myself.
Yes, Mule.
Maybe I can repeat my questions to the nominee because he seems to have lost track of the question. My first question was, earlier you had alluded that you can have a discussion with Starlink. And Starlink, introduction of Starlink in this country will definitely kill Safaricom tomorrow.
Yes.
And therefore, the government will lose the revenue they have been collecting from Safaricom and also the investment they have done on the fiber cable.
Right.
My question is, how will you protect foreign investors not to come and kill Kenyan's company on the expense of what they intend to do?
in the country, despite that there are satellite and whatever. There is massive investment of fiber cable in this country. Question number 2, we are talking about Vision 2030. The emphasis is that the development of knowledge-based economy, highlighting the emphasis of ICT integration in education to enhance productivity and efficiency within the country. How will you use the office, if approved, to make sure that ICT become a key pillar in education sector in this country, to make sure that we don't have this issue we are facing whereby we cannot leverage on what comes out of the school and take advantage of the concert city as it was envisaged by the Vision 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Mole, the issue of Starlink that I referred to when I think I was answering Honorable Koichi's question was in as far as we don't have fiber optic and we don't have masts in places like, for lack of a better example, Garissa or one of those places. And masts of aerial masts of Starlink are available. And as we speak now, today, Kenyans are using Starlink. I am told by CA, the regulator, that they are in talks with Starlink on conditions that they've been given to work in Kenya. And I'm sure those conditions will surface in the matter that you raise. It's also important to understand that most of the investors in this field are also foreign, and they are private businesses. As a businessman, where I stand, we should be able to create a fair playing ground and competition for businesses, because again, it will be unfair to protect some modern and innovative ideas from coming into society like Kenya simply because we would want to protect. I'm sure the regulator should be able to find a balance where we do not lock out. I will tell you that from where I sit, I know that Starlink has given a lot of work in Nairobi in terms of connectivity until they do not have the frequency anymore. But Kenyans, as innovative as they are, they're able to go to Meru, buy a Starlink dish and activate it in Meru and bring it back to Nairobi. One is the speeds that Kenyans are talking about, because you will get speeds of up to 200 Mbps on a 2,800 fee, and that is what Kenyans want, value for money. So we should be able to strike a balance on those things. Education, part of it. I'm sure that if I am confirmed, we should be able to set out a curriculum that will be used in TVETs, used in the constituency hubs and in the ward hubs as training centers for Kenyans to acquire the necessary skill as one of the pillars in the master plan for ICT and digital economy, and then use the young innovators, the young Gen Zs and others to be able to start their own small hubs where every corner of the country a Gen Z will be involved in digital enterprise for their own good. So that's my take. There was a question from Shuria about the CA tax compliance. I'm not sure exactly what that was. If I can get yeah? I'm not sure exactly, Speaker, how.
He's left. Go to the next by
Yes, there
Russell.
was a question by, I think, Mheshimiwa from SACCO. Problem of cyberbullying and attacks, especially the threat on the 20,000 services on e-citizen. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is the issue of control and regulations of what, so that we can create firewalls and things like that that stop interference and hacking of government services. And it has happened in the first world, and we should be able to do that ourselves here in Kenya. So we should be on the forefront in making sure that these services are free from interference from hackers, attackers, and bullies.
Rahab, you'll pass. Mishi?
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, much of the vital questions have already been asked, but I'll just ask a few of them. My first question is on the internet outage by service providers, which often disrupt businesses, education, and access to critical services, leading to significant consumer losses. If approved, what policies or regulations will you implement to ensure internet service provider compensate users for prolonged outages? Furthermore, how will your ministry enforce service level agreements to guarantee reliability and accountability from providers? My second question, our constitution envisage right to information, and as Parliamentary Service Commission, being one of the commissioners, we have a dream of ensuring that Kenyans can follow live proceeding in our parliament, both the houses, that both in the chamber and also in our committee meeting. We have tried, but we have limited resources. Do you think there is a room for collaboration between your ministry and Parliamentary Service Commission to ensure that we actualize this dream? And my last question is to appreciate and consider the recent completion of the Mombasa to Malaba fiber project aimed at enhancing connectivity. My question will be, what specific programs are you going to put in place to ensure that the local communities can benefit, and in particular, the youth within those counties where we have that project of Mombasa Malaba fiber project, to ensure at least we have like digital literacy and access on online opportunities? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Yes, nominee.
Thank you, Chair. On the issue of internet outage, again, this is a big problem in the country, and every time you call these providers, they have stories that they are not aware. So we probably may need to do some regulations that and ask every provider to be able to monitor outage. But it's tricky because you will find, Mr. Speaker, we have some providers who have capacity of 1 gig in a certain area, but they have acquired or given internet to double that capacity, meaning every other time half of the places will not be working. And this is something the regulator should be able to take up quickly and make sure that we have consistent, stable internet for business. But you also see that most of the internet services are based on stable power. So if we have unstable Kenya power supply, you will find that sometimes there is outage because of lack of energy from Kenya Power. So it cuts across departments. But we should be able to bring these people together and see what we can do to reduce outage. One of the ways, Mr. Speaker, to do so, if it is a result of power, is to have green energy available, and solar is really not that expensive. A hub can get 4 panels that will keep the hub running for probably 70% of the time when the sun shines. But yes, it's a concern for many. It's also a concern that you will pass some places on mobile network is not working, 3G or 5G. So it's something that I should be able to take up with the regulator and see what it is that the department can do, even in terms of compensating people on the time that they have lost. But knowing businessmen in Kenya as we are, sometimes it's tricky when you start talking of compensations, but it is something that can be looked into. I don't know exactly why PSA or Parliament would not have stable internet when government owns 20% of the internet on the cable. So, Madam Misha, Honorable Misha, if I'm confirmed, I will bring a direct line. So, Madam Misha, Honorable Misha, if I'm confirmed, I will bring a direct line of internet into the National Assembly. And that should be internet that is almost free. Because if you look at internet as a pipe of water, it is full of water flowing, and it doesn't stop flowing. So if it is not tapped, it means it goes to waste. Again, Mr. Speaker, policy-wise, it's important that we try and classify internet as not only essential, but a vital, essential, and desirable commodity. You will find that water is a utility, power is a utility. I would want to drive the ministry, if I'm confirmed, Mr. Speaker, to classify internet as a vital, essential, and desirable utility, so that the issues of way leave, etc., and the fees that are charged by counties become a thing of the past, so that we can move internet to the whole republic and people enjoy high-speed internet. You will find that even things like hotspots that were put by government, most of them are not working because they were put, internet was connected, the switches were put, the extenders were put in place, but there was no sustainability plan. And in my first few days in office, if you confirm me, is to make sure that we have an arrangement with ISPs who have services there and probably have cross-trade with what they pay in fees, and they man those public hotspots so that there is internet every corner of the republic. As the president says, every market should have internet, and that is my belief. I guess,
yes,
Speaker,
Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. I just have a few questions for you, Honorable Kabogo, from the members of the public. One person has asked, how will you balance the need for regulation within the digital economy to ensure innovation and competition while protecting consumer rights and preventing monopolistic practices by major tech players? That's one question. The second one is, what plans do you have for scaling up digital literacy skills development in Kenya, particularly in our schools, universities, and local communities, to prepare them for the demands of the digital economy and workspace? And last, how will you address the issue of radio and TV stations, particular vernacular stations, promoting betting and gambling, which has increasingly affected all segments of society, including older generation? What measures will you implement to regulate such content and protect vulnerable populations and curb this negative social impact through caused by excessive gambling?
Good. Those are questions sent in by members of the public.
Thank you.
Let's take one more from Naisula.
This is a direct question. If approved for appointment, what 5 key deliverables can the youth of Kenya expect to see from your office in the short and medium term?
Mary Masse, you have a question from a member of the public?
Yes, from the member of the public. He's saying, digital services require public trust. How would the CS nominee maintain ethical standards in the use of technology, especially in projects that involve surveillance or data collection? And then the second one is, ICT projects have historically faced challenges related to corruption and mismanagement. What specific measures will the CS nominee implement to ensure transparency and accountability in ICT procurement processes?
Yes, the first one was on the balancing of digital economy regulations and monopoly. As I said earlier, Mheshimiwa Deputy Speaker, we have to balance and create regulations that look on both sides of the device, but bringing all stakeholders together and discussing these issues sometimes is the easier route so that people understand the parameters. Again, we may have laws, but they are not followed. I'm sure even in bullying, CA has come up with an app that helps you report these things, but not many people know about it. So engagement with public and stakeholders would help us come up with regulations on how to control that monopoly. Plans on how to scale digital skills. We have said we develop curriculums on TVETs in secondary schools and all these things, which we will work together with the Ministry of Education to make sure that this very vital tool is available to Kenyans through secondary TVET and even primary schools. And as it is the plan to connect all institutions of learning with high-speed internet, which is again available on the fiber optic cable. That will enhance learning. We can also involve the young that are educated, very many of them in the streets, as ICT ambassadors in constituencies who may be employed by the ministry to run these programs even online, so that it's not confined only to institutions, and that is my thinking. Betting, Mr. Speaker, it is a very serious problem. Where you find, without risking naming radio stations, you will find a young man holds a knife to the mother in the morning and asks for 100 shillings. And if you don't give, nitakuduka. And this is betting. I am sure there must be a way of controlling betting in Kenya. It is a big problem. One may not understand because it looks like 100 shillings in betting, which is neither here nor there. But if you listen to what these radio stations say, they have 1 million people early morning putting 100 shillings and hoping to earn 100,000 shillings. If my mathematics are right, Mr. Speaker, that is 100 million shillings in that first hour of the day on one radio station. And what is paid back in total is about 10 million shillings. So we have people making Kenyans poorer every day, and Kenyans have hope in making 10,000. But they don't understand that 100 million shillings has been collected. So this is a thing that cuts across security, ICT, and the freedom of radio broadcasting, etc., that the government needs to come together and stop. We have governments out there that have stopped gambling completely, at the risk of getting in trouble with these cartels because they are there. We need to do something, and urgently so, to control.
What will you do? You know,
I will call the ministry in charge of security, and this is a security concern. I should be able to move even in cabinet and say, do we think we need to deal with gambling? Because in my view, this is what is happening. It requires a concerted effort of government, Mr. Speaker, my belief. Single-handedly, I will not be able to handle. We have to do this together. Again, talk to members of the public. They have never understood this as a business that helps certain people and not them. They believe that they have a chance of putting in 100 and coming out with 10 million shillings or 10,000 shillings. Also, we could use an approach, Mr. Speaker, where people use token of 100 shillings to buy into government programs like Konza, so that every Kenyan who puts 100 shillings in a month or so, it has 8% in terms of ownership of 8 shillings from 100, sorry, to 150 over 2 or 3 months, so that instead of getting 10,000 from gambling, you're getting 10% of your investment at the end of the month. And this is happening the world over in terms of tokenization. People invest in shares. So if we can encourage Kenyans to invest in shares of places like Konza City, you will find that they are putting the gambling money into useful savings in the future. But this is also a culture that, Mr. Speaker, has really grown in Kenya. The gambling culture is a menace, just to say the least. Honorable, I should ask for deliverables for the youth. We are saying we want to involve them to come to these cyber cafes, learn, and engage them to take loans of government. I will be proposing a loan fund for the young, the youth, and everyone, ICT loan fund for startups, where we will lend them LPOs to buy computers, to buy routers, and to have rent to pay. This will move the 1450 burden of building a class in a ward, as opposed to building. They will get rentals, get skills from government, a planned curriculum skill for them, and then we will win them out to be on their own and make money on their own, because the digital platform right now, I'm told, is contributing about 10% of our GDP. It should be moving to 50%, because that's where the world is. Again, if we can deal with the exploitations that the Honorable Ichong'wa talked about, where people find digital jobs can be done, HBOs in Kenya, very cheaply. If we regulate that and make them get a good share of their contents, you will see content creators right now are crying that music played on radios, etc., that money never gets to them. We should be able to quickly deal with that so that they get a good share of the YouTube runs that their content transparency.
Mr.
Speaker, in my mind, where I sit, corruption is a problem again, a problem talked about all over. But if the dealings of government are in the open, for example, there is a portal of the Ministry of ICT and the stuff that the ministry is doing, the engagement with public will put fear in people who plan to do certain things, Mr. Speaker, corrupt dealings. Information is power in the hands of the public, and creating discussions openly. But you will find, again, corruption, Mr. Speaker, doesn't happen on the payment. It happens from inception. So if these things are brought to the open, it will minimize corruption in public affairs. So as a ministry, if I'm confirmed, I should be able to say, I will make sure in the next 6 months, if I'm confirmed, Mr. Speaker, that the Ministry of ICT and Digital Economy is completely digital, and hoping that other ministries, because we now have officers, I'm told, Ministry of ICT directors in every ministry, we should be able to get Kenya government services digital completely. There's a lot of talk out there of e-citizen not working. I've been a victim myself, Mr. Speaker, trying to pay discharge fees for land. And it's important for us sometimes to tell the public what is happening to these platforms And what I understand, and which we should be able to deal with, Mr. Speaker, is that the front end, which is the application to pay, is automated, such that you can do that in 15 or 5 minutes, so to speak. But when the application for discharge goes to lands, there are files that they have to go through manually to be able to generate an invoice for you. So we've done half the automation. So we should be able to tell Kenyans how progressively we are doing in terms of automating end to end. And I'm sure that can be sectionalized in every ministry that is giving government services. But getting 20,000 services today is not a simple thing. So I'm thinking if we all buy into the idea of making Kenya a digital country in terms of government services, it will be easy for everyone. Even for members of parliament, where they want to know exactly what is happening in every ministry, and those portals are available for read only. You should be able to know from the ministry, even as opposed to you asking a question from a minister, you should be able to know exactly what is happening in the Ministry of Sports in terms of their development programs. So, Mr. Speaker, it's a journey that is worth taking, and we are equal to the task as government service providers.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Probably just correct, Standard Media have put out that he said 1912 is when he started using computers. I just want him to clarify on record so that Standard Media doesn't play around with it.
He was born 1912.
Yeah, I know. He's only 60. He was born in 1961, but Standard Media have said he started using computers in 1912. That's what they have reported. So he just needs to just say it.
Mr. Speaker, I had said earlier that I had issues with the Standard, and I took them to court and made a little bit of money. So surely, I was not around 1912. But if they don't withdraw, I shall do what is necessary, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Or simply tell the country when you started using computers.
Yes, I had said here, and it's on record, Mr. Speaker, that it was 1992.
Yes.
And I remember it very well.
That's
because
what
that time Somalia had just gotten into problems.
Where did the Standard pick 1912?
So probably he had 12 instead of 92.
We just encourage let's not escalate it. We encourage you, gentlemen of the media, be as accurate as you can in reporting what is going on here. Because Honorable Kabogo didn't say 1912, and if he did, I would have stopped him. Because that would have been a crude misinformation. Honorable Kabogo, there's one more Kenyan called Muhuyo, who says, ask the nominee how he will ensure free, fair, and precise election by ensuring counting and release of result is fast and accurate, like in the US, where results for over 200 million voters is released in less than 48 hours, whereas here, we just have a less than 1/8 of the same. He's also, of course, not factually correct, because we know the case of Florida in the US. Yes. But you can answer.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. That is a very genuine and good question.
Yes.
But the ministry that probably, if you confirm me, will have very little on the issue of elections because there is a body. But as a Kenyan, Mr. Speaker, I would want a situation where I walk into a ballot room where elections are being held. I am identified digitally, I vote digitally, and my vote is counted that minute. That is a dream that every other politician who has suffered things like I have suffered on issues of elections, it will be a thing of the past, but it's a dream for many countries.
Before I come to the final issues, Honorable Kabogo, as a Kenyan, and if you are confirmed, you've been repeatedly asked here about cyberbullying, pornography, and dirty material on the net that's accessed by our children. We were in Australia in October, and the Prime Minister of Australia was moving a bill, the Prime Minister himself, to curtail access to social media by under 16s because of these kind of reasons. I'm not saying you need that kind of drastic action, but from where you sit, what ideas do you have in protecting children under 16s from access to filth material that is all over?
Mr. Speaker,
I meet many parents who cry and say, look, I walked into my son's room and I didn't believe what I saw. How old was your son? 7. I walked into my daughter's room. I didn't believe what I saw. How old is your daughter? 10.
Mr. Speaker.
And remember, the state has a duty to protect and guarantee and guard the morals of our children.
Mr. Speaker, as a parent, from where I sit, I don't think what you saw in Australia, if we did that here, would be a drastic move. It may be the first step towards curtailing such dirty players on the internet. The other thing is create very strict regulations for people like Facebook or TikTok, because they are on platforms, so that Kenya has a negotiation and an agreement with those platforms that they cannot do this, because even doing the law, as Australia is planning to do, enforcement, Mr. Speaker, is one challenge. But I would prefer to recommend to Cabinet that such a law be put in place ASAP, because what is out there is really shocking. And we cannot deal with the morals and teach children morals if this is what they see on the internet. It gets to a point as a parent, you wish that there was no internet. You wish there was no social media because of the exposure of these things in the minds of children. So it's a bad problem. It's worse than gambling. It is really bad. And as minister, if I'm confirmed, Mr. Speaker, I know there's a lot of money that these companies spend to stay afloat. But as a country, if we take a stand that this cannot happen in Kenya, and a drastic move is taken to ban one of them, then the rest will toe the line. If you see the debate on TikTok and between America and China, you will see that money is really moving, but something positive is about to happen. So as a Kenyan, a parent, and probably as a minister, is something that is really concerning about what is available there. You cannot even face your children in your own living room because of the material that has come to their heads. And you will see a family that has a boy and a girl of probably that age of 7 and 8. Your guess is as good as mine, Mr. Speaker, what you would see them do. And it is killing for a parent to be able to deal with such a thing.
Thank you, nominee. I will now ask you a few other questions. You told us how hardworking you are and how much money you have made. What is your net worth in terms of assets, houses,
Mr.
land,
Speaker,
cash, and bank?
Residential houses, Mr. Speaker, my total net worth is about 700 million. Movable assets of about 40 million, Mr. Speaker. Land and farm, about 756 million, Mr. Speaker. Cash and current assets of about 64 million, Mr. Speaker. Beg your pardon. And interest and shares in companies, approximately 1.5 billion. So a total of about 3.01 billion, Mr. Speaker. Yes. Conservatively, Mr. Speaker.
Conservatively, you are worth over 3 billion. That's what you said, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Have you ever been convicted? Yes, Junet.
Mr. Speaker, when I listened to the presentation on the issue of net worth, the nominee said he has a movable assets. I suspect that should be vehicles and such things.
Yes,
for
Mr.
40
Speaker.
million shillings.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Only?
Conservatively, yes, sir.
Yeah, I saw another vehicle that looks very ugly. I thought that alone is 40 million. The one that looks like something else on the road. You remember?
Mr. Speaker, vehicles get devalued almost up to zero, accounting-wise. And you know the prudent rule in accounting, you anticipate both losses and profits. So, yes, it could be about 40 million.
Yes, Murugara?
It is said he also owns a chopper, and I don't see it anywhere here. A chopper. He actually, it's a movable. No.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
it is true. I had one at some point when I was a young man.
What happened to
it? And I could fly it myself. I'm a pilot myself, Mr. Speaker. So when I couldn't fly as much, I decided to let it go.
You sold it?
Yes, I sold it.
So it's part of the 3.06 billion.
Yes, it's part.
Have you ever been convicted of an offense in a court of law?
No, sir, I have never been convicted.
Have you ever been adversely mentioned in any parliamentary committee report, apart from the cited documents?
No, I have never been mentioned, Mr. Speaker.
Do you hold an office in a political party?
No, I don't, Mr. Speaker.
Tujibebe.
I resigned from Tujibebe when I was nominated by the president.
You nominated a caretaker?
Not as yet. The party is going through the process.
Have you ever been dismissed or removed from an office?
No, sir.
On account of contravention of Article 75 of the Constitution?
No, sir, I have never been.
Okay. Have you ever been adversely associated with practices that depict bias, favoritism, tribalism, nepotism in the discharge of your duties?
No, sir, but a couple of years ago, I was taken to court on hate speech, but I was acquitted of the charges. That's like nine years ago that I had said something in a Thika Stadium that was not pleasant for political opponents, but I was taken to court and I was acquitted.
Was it tribalistic or nepotistic?
No, it was not tribalistic. It was just political statements.
Right. Thank you. We now come to an end with you. Make sure you collect your documents that have been cross-checked with what we have and found to be in order. There was a bit of memoranda on you. We've seen your responses, and they are reasonably satisfactory. So unless you are lawfully held,
thank you so much.
You are discharged to
thank
go
you so
back
much,
to your
Mr. Speaker.
businesses.
And, members of the National Assembly, asanteni sana.
Thank you, Honorable Kabogo. Members, we'll have a 10-minute break to allow the clerk and his team to prepare for the next nominee. So we resume at 5:50, 10 to 6.